The beauty of life insurance is, again, it's structured properly. It's a tool that over time now, because I could vision where I wanted to go and when I want to retire, now I'm going to have a very, very significant tax-free income the rest of my life and a bunch of cash to do whatever. And my kids are taken care of, and I'm never going to really have to change my lifestyle. And that is where I think most people miss out.
Welcome to the Doctors Investor Club podcast, where physicians and dentists come together to elevate their mindset, build their assets, and create a lasting legacy. I'm your host, Dr. Kyle Stevenson. After years in the OR, I've realized wealth is not just about high income. It's about ownership, freedom, and using your money with purpose. Here at the Doctors Investor Club, we share the strategies the wealthy already know: owning a business, real estate investing, becoming your own banker, and intentional investing. Each week, we sit down with entrepreneurs, investors, and physicians who've stepped off the hamster wheel and are building wealth that outlives them. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep and the impact you leave behind. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to the Doctors Investor Club podcast, the place where physicians and dentists learn how to think like the wealthy, invest like insiders, and create legacies that last. Today's guest is an orthodontist, entrepreneur, and visionary. Dr. Jeff Seibert, known not only for running a thriving dental practice, but also for expanding into wellness, investing, and education. Jeff brings a rare mix of clinical expertise and entrepreneurial instinct. We'll explore his story, how he built his practice, how he sees opportunity in and outside of healthcare, and what's next in his journey. Jeff, welcome to the show, sir.
Hi, Kyle. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's just start at the beginning. I know you're in clinic right now. You're in the middle of clinic, basically at lunch. So you're a busy guy. But let's start at the beginning. What drew you? What first drew you into dentistry, and how'd you get started?
Wow, I was very blessed. My uncle John Lohr has kind of always been my mentor. You know, he lived on a lake. His front yard was the first tee. His backyard was the lake. I used to water ski as a kid, and I thought, man, this is the life. And he was a great general dentist, and he kind of took me under his wing and he said, you know, you can come take my practice over. And he took me, you know, as a kid, put that thought in me. And I can remember even going back to career day in school, always wanted to be a dentist. And just even having that, knowing that and having that kind of vision just took a lot of stress away. I mean, you know, you went to college, I kind of reverse engineered grades, what I took, school, you know, took your calculuses, all this stuff, the physics, everything to kind of reverse engineer getting into dental school. You know, I mean, how many kids start college, don't even really have a clue, and then, you know, waste all that money in college. And I was very blessed because of him. And then, you know, it's like you always say, tell God your plans, he's going to laugh at you. My original plan was to take over his practice and retire out on the lake. And you know, several years in, I was a really good poker player, almost really kind of played at a professional level, and met a guy playing poker that his wife was a dentist and wanted to grow a bigger pie. And I really liked orthodontics, and I kind of picked up on that. And even though I was doing general dentistry, and then in 2005, I switched and went straight ortho, and started a business with him. And it was kind of a cool story through a poker game, but we started growing dental practices, and I would get a piece of it, I would buy into it, and then I would do the ortho and take my team around, and it was kind of like a monopoly. I, you know, started with one practice, then two, then three, and then next thing you know, the height I had, you know, up ownership and up to 20, and it just kind of grew from there. And now I've kind of, and you know, that's kind of how, in a nutshell, I got started. A lot of it is his vision. I wish I could tell you I was super smart and had this great vision to do this, but one of my favorite sayings is luck is preparation meeting opportunity. And I took a big chance, and I remember telling my uncle, it kind of paid off for him too, because he got to invest and done really well in our company. But it was hard because, I mean, I was like his kid, and he invested in me. And, you know, I kind of had to tell him one day, hey, I think I'm onto something bigger and better, and I think I want to kind of pursue this. And of course, he did it with loving arms, but, you know, he'd kind of taken me in, and I had to tell him, hey, listen, I think I'm going to leave the practice and go and go start this. And it was the best decision I ever made from a financial standpoint. But he was rewarded because he got to invest, and he did really well as well from that standpoint. So he's retired now, but he still loves to fly, and we're still really close.
That's great. And there's a lot in that, the whole, to your point about luck. And then even just, I always say you're one connection away from a golden opportunity. You don't know where that opportunity is going to come. Right. And so you meeting that chance meeting that you had at playing poker turned into something special, and you're able to build from that. What is that process like, going from general dentistry to orthodontics?
Well, I'm a very unique situation because several guys go back and they get their degree, and I guess technically, I'm not an orthodontist in the sense that I went back and got my master's, but I'm held to the same standard. And I've done it exclusively for, I guess, 2005. Of course, I've been doing ortho now for 26 years, probably completed over 12,000 cases, do MARPs, do surgery cases. I've just learned, now the access to information, and then, hired some really good orthodontists in the company. So I kind of always had a good mentorship. And, so that's kind of how that formed. I did it, I kind of reverse engineered it. I built a business around a talent and learned how to leverage it kind of backwards than most people. And so there are some advantages, I guess, technically not to have that degree, because at the time I still needed my talents or my skills when we're opening practices. I still had to do a little bit of both to grow the business up so that we can hire a general dentist to come in there. So I'm a little bit unique in that situation, but yeah, I mean, I see 1,500 patients a month. So
Wow.
you got the 10,000 hour rule a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I loved orthodontics. It's a lot easier on my back and my ears. And if you learn to leverage it, I think you can leverage orthodontics, unlike most professions that, once you get them diagnosed, get them going, bend the wires, your staff can do a lot of the auxiliary stuff. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the big advantages of orthodontics. And my niche is I cater to, a much lower socioeconomic patient pool. I always felt like orthodontics shouldn't be a privilege. So I've just
Mm-hmm.
kind of made it, my model has been more of a much lower fee, mass produce, and there's nothing wrong with that. One of my dear friends who's my orthodontist, because I'm having surgery here to fix some sleep issues, probably a lot of his cases are 2 and 3 times higher than mine. Different environment. He's amazing. It's just everybody's got their own niche, right? So
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
that's kind of been our niche. And so it's been a blessing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's allowed me to make some money to grow the business and to invest elsewhere.
Yeah,
So
good. We'll talk about that for sure. In dentistry, do you guys have actual classes on business and finance? Because a lot of dentists do come out and start their own practice, whereas physicians, we get no financial backing whatsoever, no financial classes or anything. And I think dentists are a little bit different breed when it comes to that.
I'll probably answer that in a nutshell. I will say we got as much training in what matters in business in dental school as you got in med school about filling cavities. So you could take that, yeah,
Okay.
which is like next to none, right? I mean, you
Yep.
get a little
Yep.
bit, you have some private practice stuff, but and I feel really bad. I was so blessed to have my uncle, right? From not only from clinical to have somebody over your side, but to kind of teach you the business, to teach you people skills. One of the, I don't do it so much anymore because ortho's a little different, but one of the biggest practice builders was, after a hard procedure, you call your patient every night and check on them. And that was like the biggest practice builder ever. But just to kind of have all that mentorship, you can try to buy it and you can go do some, AGD type stuff but at the end of the day, we're all just thrown into the fire.
Mm-hmm.
And, now with social media, there's some really good guys that have started some dental investment groups or practice management, give those guys a lot of credit. Because nowadays, with access to information, you can go and find out, hey man, I'm really struggling with this insurance. What do you guys do? What do you guys
Mm-hmm.
do about your office manuals? And now you can talk to or reach out to like 10,000 dentists or some CPAs or whatever. And I've met some really awesome guys through those groups. And so, matter of fact, I was in Chicago a couple of weeks ago with Dr. Mark McClellan from his group, Macro Wealth Management, and I met Chris. Same when I met you, went on his podcast. Great guy. I mean, that
Yep.
guy's
Chris Noggle.
sharp. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely
Yeah,
sharp as
he's.
can be. So if you're putting yourself out there, I guess another opportunity, like meeting you, who knows,
Mhm.
like so. But you gotta have some skin in the game to go meet people, right?
Yep. Yep.
So
Exactly. Yeah. So just to go back to that, we were at a mastermind 8 weeks ago or so, and I sat next to your brother at lunch, and that's how we started talking. And then he introduced me to you. And so, yeah, to your point, it's like getting out there and meeting people, going to different events, figuring out who you can help, who you can create value for, and that law of reciprocity where people will create value for you as well.
absolutely. And I've been so blessed in my career. And when I first got out, I thought I kind of had this special niche and I kind of kept to myself. And I just, thought I don't want anybody to come in here and replicate my little piece of the world. And I realized that was, not, it was more self-centered, but I look at now at some of the mentors and even like, again, my orthodontist Chad Caps. I mean, the guy's brilliant and he shared anything I ask him. I've actually even tried to pay him to mentor me on certain aspects of where I could get better and grow, some of this airway stuff. And he's like, Jeff, I'm happy to do it. And it's just, again, like having that big brother that you can always pass
Mhm.
information on to, whether it's in your field or in finances or, any kind of mentorship. And then as as you get older, you realize the more that you help, it always comes back, right?
Mhm.
So he may be doing something there and he's blessed some other way and, vice versa. And matter of fact, kind of funny, he's a big Aggie and I come from a long line of Longhorns. And so, of course, this last Friday night, we all went down to Austin and watched that game. And of course, it was a lot better for UT fans, but just kind of stuff like that. Just, you know what? I
Mhm.
just want to take your family down there and bless you like you blessed me. It just is a fun time. So just,
That's great.
just little things like that. Um,
Yep, I love that because really my third question to you was all about mentorship, and you talked about your uncle, you've talked about colleagues that you've used as mentors, which is so important. And I think speaking to young dentists out there, right, young physicians, it's that same adage, right, that same advice to them, right? Find somebody that's doing what you want to be doing.
Exactly. I always said I'm never that smart. I'm the greatest copycatter there is. I just go find somebody smarter, somebody more successful, somebody whose cases look better than mine, somebody's doing something that I don't feel comfortable with doing, and I just go ask them. And when you do that, so many times they're actually flattered that you're asking them. And most people that are either pay for their lectures or you go visit them or whatever. But the funny thing about dentists, and I think doctors in general, is there's so much FOMO, like and there's so much bad information about there about creating wealth and
Mhm.
where to get started. And like anything, there's bad consultants, bad advisors,
Yep.
and then there's been definitely some that have led a lot of dentists astray. But at the end of the day, it's about having a team that you trust and then you stick to the plan. Because if I'd have done that earlier in my career, the amount of mistakes that I wouldn't have made. um Fortunately, you always beat ourselves up on the mistakes, but and you don't ever seem to give ourselves enough credit for the success. And if I didn't have
Mhm.
success, I couldn't have made those mistakes. Um, so it's always a process. But
Mhm.
if I could tell younger dentists that there's nothing worse than comparison. There's nothing that'll drain your joy then especially on social media, oh, this guy's making all this, he's doing this, like there's nobody gets rich. I mean, unless you're born on third base with a rich parents or you win the lottery, it takes time to build your craft. It takes time to build wealth. It takes time for mentorship. And the people that have that attitude that, hey, I can sacrifice today for I'm looking at the big term and I've got a plan and I'm going to, for the most part, stick to my plan. Just having that is so key. I know that we're connected through that mastermind and life insurance, and and you talk about a conversation that half the world is going to laugh at you and say it's the worst deal ever, and sometimes they're not wrong depending on how it's structured or But the thing with that even is we're not even talking about the same thing. Like we're talking about a
Mhm.
financial tool to leverage, to double leverage, to have an incredible death benefit. That's a tool to not get wealthy, but to recapture wealth that you know, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, and I've used that in my entire life. And kind of, I'm not going to get to the end of the story where I was going even about life insurance and how it's leveraged and how I'm going to, my ultimate plan for that. But you know, you talk to somebody like you or me that's understood it, that's researched it, that utilizes it, that actually, you know, recaptures and has tax advantages, and you're a business owner and all those things. You realize, man, it's a really incredible tool if it's utilized. If it's not
Mhm.
utilized, it's pretty boring.
Exactly.
Um,
Let's talk about it real quick. So Jeff is talking about a specially designed cash value whole life insurance policy where, you know, the Dave Ramseys and even Jim Dolly, which is a big white coat investor. A lot of physicians listen to him, and he definitely is more on the Dave Ramsey side of like just buy term, invest the difference. Let's get into it because you have been practicing that infinite banking concept, the process for a lot of years, right? You've been doing this for
yeah,
what, since 2009 or
yeah,
10? I heard you on the Chris Nagle
two,
podcast, which was
yeah,
phenomenal, by the
two,
way.
2009. I got to give a shout out. Just not only she's an amazing friend and advisor, Teresa Kuhn. Not you know absolutely treats her customers the right way. Is as much a fiduciary. Will not let them get it over their toes. You know, explain it to me. No, there's zero pressure. I did a lot of research going into this and Pamela Yellen's original Bank on Yourself. And I was very, very blessed to actually meet Nelson Nash several times. And what a man and a legacy. And so, you know, it's going to be hard to compare apples to apples for people who don't know. But let's go back to the notion of buy term and invest the difference. Okay, and let's talk about if I ever wanted to start over and get rich, I would do nothing in my life but sell and be the bank of term life insurance because I think the number is close to 99% now.
Hmm. Hmm.
Never pan out, meaning they, you know, they lapse and then they get expensive and no one ever needs it. So that's a pretty worthless product for minus the one person that unfortunately has to use it. Second big aspect I'd say about that is human nature is human nature. And what do I mean by that? It all sounds great to buy term and invest the difference, but look at the numbers of people who actually do that. They start making more money, they buy, and doctors and dentists are the worst. And instead of taking that chunk and having that discipline, you know, we buy bigger houses, we buy bigger practices, we buy nicer cars, we put our kids in private school and all those things. And then, you know, and one of the things that really kind of obviously loved your family, but I loved your story about your dad, right? Like, you know, guys made
Hmm.
all this money and all these things. And next thing you know, like, hey, you know, end of life, I've kind of run out or, you know, like, am I really set up? And then, you know, and then it goes back to, you know, all these policies, right? So that's, you know, the death benefit is what makes the whole thing work, you know, and if people don't really compare, well, I got scratch right. Let me go back to invest and buy the difference. So
Hmm.
invest in term and buy the difference. Term is useless for the most part, so that's a wasted money. Then you go to people's actually the discipline to do that. Okay, fine, and but then even take that a step further and say, okay, I'm at the getting towards a retirement age. My term policy is pretty much done now. And then all of a sudden, okay, I've built this amount of money, whatever that is, and I don't want to make people uncomfortable because for you know, for one guy's ceiling, one guy's a floor. But then you have
Right.
this mindset at retirement is like, man, I only have this so much money, and can I spend it all? And can I have that same mindset of, you know, an abundant mindset as opposed to actually I'm not working anymore. And you know, I've got to really kind of budget now. And then that's another aspect. And then am I going to spend all my money? And then am I going to be able to leave anything? And so, you know, when you look at the advantage, the amazing tool of, and whatever you want to call it, investment, whatever, all life insurance is doing is leveraging your health now, right? So then you take that, you know, take that tool, the infinite banking concept, you know, fund it. I can go in as much details as you want, but as far as for most people young enough to get started, after about 5 years, it's free in the sense that the money you put in is cash available to take out. And then if you use that bank, for even take the smallest person, take it as a car, and you learn again discipline to take it out, pay it back, pay the interest. When your life gets more valuable and you want to buy more insurance, then it's available, right? To keep perpetually that flow, the velocity of money. So take it back, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of get to where I was going about the good news that just happened before I even talked to you last. We've had several really big offers to buy a company, and
Private equity
I
buying you guys?
yes. Like,
Okay.
and I mean, they're significant numbers. We do 35 million in revenue, have a strong EBITDA, and we're getting, 7.5, 8 times.
Mm.
And so I want to just kind of, and everybody's number's different, but I want to kind of understand how I utilized my policies, and they're significant, right? So I have some pretty significant loans for my policies because I funded them back when I was making a lot of money, and I use that to grow and buy other policy, buy other practices, and equipment along the way. And I write off the interest, and very legal, and so I'm kind of creating money out of thin air, recapturing that. Pay the IRS or pay yourself a percentage, and now all of a sudden I kind of planned for this. I'm going to be sitting on a huge, huge liquid event. And all those policies now that have been churning, that have been getting nice dividends at a bigger number, because again, we talked about recognized and non-recognized policies, meaning those are getting paid those dividends and increases on that big number every year. Okay. And so for people who don't know that, that's the double leverage part. So you go to a bank, you borrow money, you pay them all the interest, you buy an asset, whatever. And at the end of the day, the bank's made all the money and you have an asset, and whether it's depreciating or it's a positive asset, whatever, but that's traditional finance, as opposed to setting up your bank, being the bank, you know, buying that asset, paying the bank back, paying yourself interest back. And now at the end of the day, you have an asset paid for and you've recaptured all the money plus the interest plus the tax write-off. Okay. So now fast forward, I have three significant policies. One is not a bank on yourself type policy. I don't know, that's for very privileged, I don't want to talk about that right now, but,
Yeah.
but now think about this. I'm going to have this huge liquid event. All these policies are going to be filled back up, maximizing leverage. And even if I take all that money now, guys, all of it, it's already built in to make 5-6% tax free forever if I wanted to. Or people say, well, okay, what if you want to buy another company, or what do you want to buy, an asset or something else? I say, big deal. Okay, now I've got this amazing pool of cash to pull from, keep leveraging it, and keep going. And the biggest thing about human nature is, even being your own bank, and just like, you look in Nelson Nash book, if you don't pay yourself back, if the bankers don't pay themselves back, if you own your own store and you take stuff out and you don't pay yourself
Mm-hmm.
back, what happens? It doesn't
You
work,
go under.
right?
You're stealing from
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah.
So that to me is like the ultimate end game of the infinite banking concept, in the sense that I leveraged all of that. They're all going to be full again. They're going to grow and grow and grow. Now I have assets. Now I have growing for life, getting bigger. And all three boxes are checked off. What do I mean? My kids, the legacy, the death benefits, um, you know, even all that is taken care of, right? So the whole Rockefeller, if we've touched on that,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big Rockefeller Method trust guy. The perpetual motion of keep your family invested in life insurance so that it continues to grow, so that they have capital, right? I don't want to raise a bunch of trust fund babies, but imagine college paid for, your first house down payment, you know, car, and again, pay that back over time. And so when you look back at the traditional, like, buy term, invest the difference, you're subject to markets, you're subject to emotion. It's another big thing. What is peace of mind worth to an investor?
Mm-hmm.
Some guys super high gamble Bitcoin, I have nothing to say good or bad about Bitcoin. I hope you all kill it. I'm not a hater on anything. I just know that there's a lot of gambling there, and the emotions of up and down. Stock market's been on an amazing tear. Most people that, are under 35 haven't experienced what I've experienced at 53 through the 2000s and 2008. And you see, some pretty dismal returns. And if that's your time to retire, or you're, have all this quote unquote money on paper, and you look up one day and it's disappeared, not very many people can stomach that. And, the beauty of life insurance is, again, it's structured properly. It's a tool that over time now, because I saw the future, not the future, but I could vision where I wanted to go and when I want to retire. Now I'm going to have a very, very significant tax-free income the rest of my life. And that has and a bunch of cash to do whatever. And my kids are taken care of, and I'm never gonna really have to change my lifestyle. And that is where I think most people miss out. I never had to really, I mean, the whole Ramsey, like, listen, guys, there's no truer statement that youth is wasted on the young. And you go through your earning, you're young and you're healthy and you're trying to break your back to make some money. And then, that whole model of retirement. And then now I'm too tired to enjoy it, and all those other things. And I just think, when you have a good plan and you have that security of, hey, this is taken care of. I never have to worry about this, even if the stock market, even if even if you're a Bitcoin person or crypto, awesome. And even if it all crashes, that's just one tool. But when you have a strong asset or a tool of life insurance, that's one aspect that basically the history of the stock market in 100 plus years, Mass Mutual just had their biggest dividend ever. That's, for me, that was where I basically made all my big money gambling. And I'd come out of 2000, I graduated in 99, been through some of that, went through the dot-com bubble, saw the world crash in 2000. It's kind of a coincidence, and Chris picked up on this, that it was 2009 when I really got interested in life insurance, for that very reason. Hey, I've gambled enough. I want a sure thing. And was very intrigued by the infinite banking concept. And so that's kind of how, now I'm 20 plus years down the road. Well, not so much in life, but like in my career, and I guess I'm close to 26 years, and now and have and kind of see all the fruits of my labor and hard work really pay off. And part of these deals, it's usually a big payout and then a 5-year roll up payout, which is exactly what my brother-in-law did in his company, and he's actually going to kill it even more the second time around. And I know there's always, some risk in that, but the group that we're looking at this is their third time to do it, and their record is pretty strong. And so,
good for you.
Yeah.
So a couple things on that. For any like young physician or young dentist, the first time they've ever heard about infinite banking concept is from my podcast. I had, like Chris Noggle and a lot of those guys on, Brent Kessler. And, again, it's hard for them to wrap their heads around, like, I don't know about that. It sounds too good to be true, this, that, and the other. But when you started yours in 2009, you knew it wasn't get rich quick. Like, it was a long-term play from the beginning. And I would say for me, like, my advantage is seeing my dad, talking to my dad, having those conversations, those deep conversations about his wealth, and seeing like that accumulation strategy of just accumulate a bunch of investments and a bunch of money, and then spend it down in your retirement until you die. Like, I saw how that failed personally. So that's why this all made sense to me. But a lot of young people are like, why would I do that? I'm just going to invest in real estate or invest in Bitcoin or whatever. Like, what is that mindset shift that they need to get into infinite banking? Because again, not to belabor this question, but I think, a lot of people just want the quick, if they could sell their practice in 5 years and make a ton of money, it's like, okay, well, what are you gonna do with that money then? Like, what is the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is, to your point, what you're saying, it's like, be able to have permission to spend throughout your life, be able to pass down money to your kids, be able to just give them the life that they should have and use from your bank, as opposed to feeling like they are struggling or redoing everything that you've done in your life or whatever. So, what is that mindset shift that they need to make now?
Well, it's a great question, and I know how almost every one of them thinks that's not educated on it. It's the simple. I have FOMO. I got to compare what's the S&P 500, what's the return, and they're not seeing the long game, which is the tax-free, the growth, it's easy to say, okay, but let's make easy round numbers. Let's just say a dentist is going to commit to, say a $50,000 a year policy, which is a lot, but I'm just using that number because it's easy to deal with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So someone's going to say, well, like you invest 50,000, you're going to 50,000, and they're going to give you this hypothetical, it's average return, and you're gonna try to make this model, and you're going to make a lot of assumptions that it's going to continue to grow like that, and they don't think about tax ramifications. They don't think about if life happens, I might need access to capital, and access to capital means I either borrow it and make the bank rich, or I have to sell my asset, pay taxes on it, borrow it back, which cuts the legs off of the compounding interest, right? So those are all little tools that's really hard for them to see, as opposed to taking the infinite banking concept, saying, hey, listen, I'm actually going to prepay some of the advantages of it, whether it's, I'm going to have to say, hey, listen, this is a long-term play. I'm going to build my bank. No different if you literally were going to build your own bank. You're going to have to build a building. You're going to have employees. You're going to have to raise capital. You're going to have investors, and you're going to have your own bank. That takes time, right? Well, you can basically build your own bank without all that stuff in about 5 years, and really right away, the cash is available. But what they do is, I'm going to take it to my guy. We don't do that because life insurance is a terrible investment. It's a tool, by the way. If you don't truly understand the infinite banking concept, then it's garbage. In the sense that if you're trying to compare, okay, actually, I'm going to make it a number a lot easier. 100 grand, which is a lot, or 10,000, but just again, an easy number. So I'm going to put in 100 grand the first year, and you're going to look on your paper, and you're going to say, "Oh my gosh, I only have $60,000 in cash value," and you're going to, that's a horrible investment, right? I could have made 7%, 8%, 10% in the stock market. And then, it slowly catches up to about year 5. You put that 100 in, and now you have your bank. And so, but that's the double leverage that they can't see. That now you can take that money out, use it for whatever, as long as you understand the velocity of money. That everything you do is financed, whether you pay cash because you've lost an opportunity, or you finance it and then you recapture it, whether you're the bank or you're the consumer. So when you understand all those principles and you start projecting it out long run, and it's just like that awesome curve that we talked about, that you saw in the seminar. When you look at that curve of zero, you get somebody out, they can borrow money, which they're down here, they pay it back, they're back to zero, and they have to appreciate it. Or the same thing as you take a saver, right? You build this money up above zero, and then you pay, down your asset.
You pay a car and it's down. Yeah, down to zero.
So you're still back to zero. And that's why most people never really can create wealth, despite how much they make or not make. So it's basically putting your money on steroids, and you have to have the vision to do it down the road, okay? And the vision to pay it back. So that's why, what is the gold standard? Well, what's the S&P 500 doing? How does this compare to the S&P 500? And it's comparing a golf ball to a bowling ball.
Yep.
It doesn't work that way. And so, if you can really see the big picture and understand the leverage part, then if you're going to have the same discipline to actually buy term and invest in difference, and if you're going to have that same discipline to actually pay yourself back when you take money out, it's not even the same comparison.
Mhm.
Because when it really starts accumulating down the end, you can't, go back to those 3 boxes we can check off. You can hardly ever go broke because it's coming in every year, and at those levels, it's going to be substantial. It's tax free, which is one of my favorite things, and then you have the legacy issues, that you have the death benefit that you're leveraged, and this was a cool. I'm going to give Mark McClellan. We talked about it because I'm very leveraged in life insurance. But I said, what do you think the ideal number to have? And he said, the death benefit ought to equal your net worth, and then you have all the bases pretty much covered. And that's an interesting. It's an interest. To really understand that concept, you really have to understand life insurance and what he means by it, and that's for a different time.
Yep.
Um,
What do you mean by that? So the death benefit should equal your net worth. Like, I mean, my death benefits are probably higher than my net worth right now.
Well, you're going to catch up though, right? Because
Right.
That's a good point, Kyle. But you're young and you're healthy, and there's never a better time to buy insurance than yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to catch up to that, right? So and if you don't, so what? Your family's, I don't think if I'm way over leveraged. I'm way over leveraged for most people in death benefit. But that's okay because it's not. I don't look at it so much. I look at it in a way of being very unselfish to my family.
Mm-hmm.
I could, have another house or whatever cars I want or all that. That doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't bring me peace. What brings me peace is teaching my kids to navigate life so that they don't have to be necessarily a slave to the dollar. So that if they want to be a teacher, or they want to be a coach, or they want to be a cheer coach, or they want to be the most incredible CEO, or whatever they want to do, I want them to have access to capital so that even if they are a coach or whatever brings them joy, that they can go on vacations. They can not, have to be indentured servants like most of us have to. And so that's part of my legacy. That's why I chose to have more, and I hope to catch it up. But and then obviously selling the company, that's a pretty significant deal. But all that was planned out. I had some vision reading Pamela Yellen's book. I mean, I couldn't tell you I knew all this was gonna, how my life was gonna go. That's much
Sure.
But I knew I wanted to be set up with basically a pension, which is kind of like life insurance. And that's how really I wanted to be able to never fear, quote unquote, running out of money in retirement, or even having the mindset of I don't want to outspend it.
Yeah. This is awesome. It's awesome having somebody like you on who has been successful. You are successful. You're about to sell your practice to private equity for a lot of money. And, you talk to all these like young doctors, young dentists, and they're like, well, that would be the ultimate dream. But then you're telling me the things that give you peace and the things that excite you and fulfill you are knowing that your kids, grandkids are going to be, basically set to do whatever their passion is. It's not because of a windfall of cash. It's because you've done the work, you did the research, and you built your own bank to be able to do that, to provide that legacy, right? And ultimately, it's not a windfall of cash that people are like, oh, if I can just get that windfall of cash, I'll be happy. It's like, no, fulfillment is a lot of things that fulfill you are actually free, right? It's taking care of your kids and your family, and speak to that.
I can tell all the young dentists, you have more than you think, and you have time, and you have health, and that's more valuable than any amount of money. And even there's some satisfaction of all this 20 plus years of labor and growing all these practices, to have a windfall. But I promise you, that's going to be cool. But that does not bring you peace. Your relationships, your legacy. Well, for me, it's a much higher power. So that's what gives me peace. So all this other stuff, It's just growing your kingdom. Like, it's gonna, a lot of that, even with my kids, will be like, okay, how are we going to set up a legacy so that perpetuates in generosity? So, those are kind of the things that bring you peace. Not another car, not another
Yep.
vacation, not another watch. None of that stuff means anything to me. So that's what, if you fall into that secular trap that the world, that capitalism tries to get you, is that more is better, is happier. You're a dog chasing your tail.
Yeah.
And I'm just telling you guys, because I was that guy. I started small. I kept growing. Like just literally like the game of Monopoly. I mean, it's literally exactly how I did it. My widget just happened to be, man, I created a business that was, that one of the greatest advantages of being able to be able to make the kind of money I do with the fees I do is because I travel to different locations every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I can maximize my day. And that's a very unique situation, but you can't build that overnight. You know what I'm saying? It did not start with that. So whatever your widget is, and whether it's just discipline in your own practice, or whether it's, discipline of learning compound interest, that, that's just it. There's a million ways to go. And the other thing too, I actually talked about this the other day with a mentor of mine who is amazing business guy. I did some private equity stuff with him, and we talked about that. He was saying we had coffee. It was actually yesterday morning before church, and he's like, "Yeah, we're going to go to Taos and ski." And we started talking about skiing. And I was like, I used to be a really big skier. I'm gotten old now, and my body's too valuable to break down. But I used to go skiing and get these instructors, and they were amazing. And I'd be like, that's cool. So then, like, what do you do when you're not skiing instructor and the snow melts? Because, well, then I go caddy, and I go to these amazing places, and not a care in the world, like not a care in the world. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know what's right or wrong, as far as which, was it worth it all these years to grind and miss games and work on Saturdays when I was really busy? I don't know, but you got to stop and smell the roses. But if I could tell the younger doctors, that money makes you more of what you are, and it gives you more choices. But money does not buy you peace, and it does not buy you happiness. So and I'll tell you, I'd much rather have it than not. But it's easier to tell you that from someone who's come from both sides.
Yep. And I talk about this quote a lot too with Robert Kiyosaki. It's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep, right? And so this is part of that, keeping a lot more of that money and it being more almost certain. Well, it is certain because there's guarantees in place, and it's going to be consistent, constant growth. And then you're going to have that money for retirement, or, if you decide that. But you're also going to have that money for your kids to pass down. And, a lot of young docs I talk to, I'm like, what's the ultimate goal? Ultimate goal is to create a legacy for my kids and grandkids. Like, what better way to do that than this?
Yeah.
You can only work so much, but when you work, to your point, I like when you say that, making a widget. It's like, yeah, we all just have our own way to make money, whatever that is. Whether you own, whether you're a mechanic or a doctor or a dentist, whatever that is, you're making money. But put that money into your machine, into your own bank, and then let that money work for you. You can pull that money out whenever you want. If you want to create another business, if you want to invest it, whatever it is, but like that money's liquid, and then that money will grow, compound, and it's there for your legacy. So I love that.
Yeah. Well, right as you were saying about, it'll come to me, but you're talking about whatever the widget and
I said how much money you keep.
Yeah. So the other thing that I would tell people that, like, oh, I'm going to do it my way, or I'm going to invest, and then they ask me what my internal rate of return was and things like that, and I said, well, I don't know. I started with one policy and I built a clinic, and I took all that money from all the profits and I put it back in my policy, and I paid myself the interest. And then it was time to buy another clinic. I did it, and I kept doing it, and I kept writing off the interest and inflating the interest rate. and IRS advantages, and you start creating income streams that all come back to that flow back in that are still growing and the policy grows. And we could talk about life paid up additions or modified endowment contracts, which isn't really relevant for this conversation, but you keep doing that and you keep doing that, and then and then having the flexibility to pay it back or to grow or not have to go to a bank and then recapture all that interest. So when you start looking at all these flow charts of where this money has been leveraged from, okay, and then me recouping my own interest, like, it's hard to quantify to tell somebody what that rate of return is, because it's almost in some ways,
Almost infinite.
yeah, it's all, um, and it goes back to when you were saying, the rich dad, poor dad. Well, I think just as much as rich dad, poor dad was the cash flow quadrants.
Mm-hmm.
And if the rich people that I've noticed, and I've been very blessed to hang out with a lot of them, they usually make their money in one business or their widget, right? And then they take that capital and they build different income streams. And wealth is creating income streams, and that's how it's multiple leverage. And I would go back to the people that say, kind of like I did, if you'd have started all that in those policies, got them when you were younger, cheaper, healthier, and as you made more money, increased the death benefit or start another policy, things like that. So it's growing. So then you have the opportunity to invest in all those things. And now, kind of like I'm kind of getting full circle towards the end of, relative to time where I'm going to exit in 5, 6, 7 years. Now, not only do I have all the wealth that I create, whether your strategy was stock market, real estate, or whatever, that's what I'm trying to see. And now those policies are really built up. They are, there's nothing sexy about the first 5 years, 10 years. But now you start looking 20 years and you start looking at that compound interest and that tax-free compound interest and that death benefit, because the discipline to keep buying LPUAs, not to mention all the cash that I could, the leverage over here. And then all of a sudden you're like, man, that's pretty cool. And that's the leverage part that people don't see. So, like, let's just say whatever your plan is, okay? Like, I don't whatever your plan is. If you just started in life insurance and take the money out and then do whatever your plan is, okay, you might have a lapse of a very little capital, in the beginning difference. But if you just did that and then you kept taking your profits and filling your bucket back up, and so you have two buckets, so that at the end, whatever your final game was, kind of like what I'm talking about with some of my practice, excuse me, now I have all these policies working too. And that's what people miss. And it's tax free, and it's liability free, or and some of the stuff's gonna be in trust anyway. But still, like life insurance to this day, it's basically lawsuit proof. So
Yep.
I mean, there's so much, not only monetary benefits, but peace of mind benefits and legal benefits. And so, not to mention, if something happens to you, like my family is more than taken care of.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what, the take home message is. You have more than you think. Start small. Do not get intimidated by bigger numbers. It's all relative. And that's why I think for most people, the illustration of a car is a great start. And for business owners, and there's so many different strategies that we can talk about on a different podcast, but for now, it is just such a financial tool to check off kind of the three boxes we talked about, at the end.
Yeah. Real quick, just a couple maybe structure or just practical questions from my standpoint is, do you use, for your whole life insurance policies, do you use like a third-party lender and use like basically the cash value as that collateral, and then just combine them all into one, basically using the bank line of credit? Does that make sense? Or do you actually use the life insurance companies to just take the money?
Oh, you mean, are you talking about premium financing, or are you talking about like actually borrowing money out of my policy straight from a policy, or am I allocating that for the bank as collateral and actually borrowing from a bank?
Yes, actually
Is
borrow
that
from
what
the
you're
bank,
asking?
like a line of credit, basically from the bank. Yes, it kind of combines them all in, and then you're using just a bank. Like Devin Byrne, a couple of guys have talked about that. Right now I just borrow straight from the insurance company, but then you can use the cash value as collateral to create a line of credit through an actual bank, and then just borrows, and it's all basically combined into one.
So that's a really good point, and I had an option to do something like that similar. And here's my 2 cents on that.
Yep.
The beauty of your life insurance cash is that you're not subject to all the banks, meticulous paperwork and constantly updating them, and blah 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 blah. So I know things were a little bit different in the lower interest rate environments, but now that they've creeped back up, to answer your question, the reason that I generally don't like to lock up my cash value in my life insurance, because what's the point? That's what it's there for.
Yep.
So, I have other assets and tree farm, things like that. Like if I really needed a big sum of money, then my credit and my assets, if I just needed to get from the bank. But the reason that I don't like to ever tie up my cash value in my life insurance, because that's kind of the point of what it's for.
Right.
Like use it, unless it's just your peace of mind emergency, because that's why I don't generally like to use it, because interest rates right now are pretty similar. Things were a little bit different. It was a little harder to make people understand it back in the 1% and 2%. Like, why wouldn't you just go borrow at 2% and leave all that stuff in your bank? I get that. I did some of that. I mean, sometimes buying a car, like it was so basically 0%.
Right.
I mean, like 1%. It's like, man, I can still pay myself back, but is it really worth it? But again, things have kind of gotten more normalized. But I guess to answer your question, I generally don't like to borrow against my life insurance. Now, death benefit, that's different. I mean, that's fine carving out. Hey, you can carve out and you could take a lien on my death benefit. If something happens to me, that's fine. That's no big deal at all. But actually locking up, my cash value to borrow against, that kind of seems counterproductive of the infinite banking concept, unless you really need it. Like, hey, I just really, for my peace of mind, I want to have this cash there. I just like the flexibility of the infinite banking concepts as opposed to dealing with the bank.
Yeah.
That's the difference. And I guess I really haven't
agree.
been in a spot where I needed a big enough, I've kind of grown most of my stuff organically. So I've never had to write or really borrow that significant amount. The only big borrowing I do now is leveraged against premium finance, but that's a whole different conversation that we won't. Let's just stick with the basics, and we can do that on a different podcast.
Sure. Real quick, and we'll finish up here soon, but what investments do you like to use? I mean, obviously you're using your infinite banking for your own business, buying equipment, things like that. But are there certain investments you like? I know that you're into timber and land. What are
the best, I've made so many mistakes. Every time I get out of my lane of FOMO, and I lost a bunch of money in marijuana stocks. But one of the best investments I ever made was, and it's very analogous to, Chris and I talked about this, and I think this is such a great analogy, like to whole life, to this infinite banking concept and a tree farm. I was very blessed to be an early investor and have the opportunity to invest in a tree farm. And I have to go back and look, but I'm talking about ballpark 2006. I was making really good money. And I knew the guys doing it. It was a friend of my uncle. So it was, trusted the guys. And man, it's really hard to, another thing too, like, hey, I'm going to invest several $100,000. And what's the IRR the next year? It's nothing. It's years, right? It's years and years and years, and it's rotation, and it's growing land, and it's building ponds and growing until you finally have, this beautiful tree farm that is, I don't want to talk about the roots, but now you have this rotation where one of my favorite lines, if people that say money doesn't grow on trees don't own a tree farm, because it's the most incredible business. The trees are basically sold out. It's, I get a nice check every month. that investment is probably 4 times in equity, because and it's kind of the same concept of, you got to look in, if you can look 20 years down the future and not be so caught up on right now, right here. What does this look like 20 years down the road? That's kind of like the really big benefits of, seeing your hard work pay off in your whole life. But now this tree farm, and the other thing too, it's another good analogy is, when you're 70 or 60, the cost of insurance, and there's nothing as attractive as going back 20 years now, when you think you can't afford it, and you're never going to be healthier. You're never going to be healthier than you are right now. I mean, unless somebody's sick. For the most part, most people, and so you're never going to be cheaper than you are right now, and it's just an actuary number. So, you know, just kind of like that tree farm, 20 years down the road, now it's a home run. Now it's amazing. And now I'm getting the rewards of my hard work and foresight to do all that. And again, kind of like when if I started my infinite banking concept journey today at 53, that's a way different look. And it's not saying it's not bad. I'm not saying it's not it's still good, but it's nothing like healthier starting it in 2009 with compound interest. It's the same analogy as a tree farm. Yes, you can go start one. You can go buy the land. You can, go get the knowledge that we had to grow the roots even better. And you can get capital and you can do that. But what do you not have? Time.
Time.
You don't have time. You cannot speed up time. So that's the beauty of all these things. If you can, everybody, we're in a society now where it's me. It's now. It's my crypto doubled and I'm a crypto million. All that great. I hope you kill it. That's an anomaly. That's not normal for most people. And again, until you sell it, cash out, put that somewhere else. Who knows? But that's where am I putting my money now? I'm putting all my money now in my policies. That's it. I don't really need to gamble anymore. They're going to grow anyway. If something comes along, that's not true. I have 2 big home runs going right now. One is in AI space. Again, very blessed to be in this deal. Guy is I kind of mentioned this on Chris' podcast that there's going to be a big ethical dilemma with AI and people in HR, things like that. The human aspect of the AI is going to, but got in early with one, and it's working out, and it's going to be a very nice return. But really, at the end of the day, I do have a big UIL policy, which is a different conversation because it's financed and it's not the kind that you hear the bad stuff about as far as underfunding. Again, that's one of the problems with UIL. But so that is tied to QQQ, and it's tied to the S&P. So I mean, I do play the markets in that sense of I'm just the same reason I'm banking on life insurance to the last 120 years of always paying a dividend plus whatever it is. It's the same thing that the stock market is. I'm banking on that the stock market is going to do what it's done in the last 100 plus years, which is it's going to go up so many times. It's going to go up like 75% of the time. You're going to have a few zeros. Those are stop loss. And then some of them are going to be minor gains. And so when you do the math, and another long-term play, like the math is too strong. And when you start looking at, compounding interest on recognized $8 and $10 million policies, that's a big number. So you just asked, I didn't really want to bring that, but since you asked where I put my money, that's where it goes. That's where it goes. Pretty conservative now. A lot of my money is going to be going to 3 kids in college. But,
but you're ready for it. That's the nice thing.
Yeah, or helping them grow business. College, I'll be on record. College is, unless you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, or some sort of, college is one of the greatest scams out there. Period. So,
yeah, I hear you, man. I mean, if my kids were in high school, I don't think we'd be sending them to college. I mean, the ultimate goal is like create value in this world. You don't need college for that. Create value, and you'll make a lot of money, right? Help a lot of people along the way.
Yeah, and I would tell somebody else to listen that even younger that's maybe not is that if you can learn
Mm-hmm.
people skills, common sense, have your English pretty good and have a great work ethic. Most business owners that I know are going to hire you 10 times over the entire world, some degree in underwater basket weaving and woke ideology that I'm entitled to everything. That's like that. Didn't mean to get into politics, but as a business owner, I'm hiring the non-educated person that works and has a great attitude over the one. For most jobs, again, there's accounting jobs, you have some specialists.
Sure.
For the most part, people skills is such a people skills and work ethic is a very valuable resource in today's world.
Yep, I love it. All right, that was fantastic, man. We got 4 final questions, just quick ones.
Yeah, go for it.
What book are you reading right now?
Right now, I'm on a mission to finish the Bible entirely. I'm getting close, so that's where I wake up in my mornings. I picked up some cool investing books because I'm really more interested at Mart's deal in Chicago. He gave out some really cool run it by the numbers, so I'm going through some of those because as I have these conversations, I really want to have the math behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And and I love math because I like it. One of my favorite things is not emotional. It's not emotional. It's just math. That's what I tell my employees all the time. But so those are by my nightstand. But
okay.
Yeah,
that's great.
So
yeah, the Bible is fantastic. I mean, I started the 1-year Bible before we had our kid 1.5 years ago, and I'm like 80% done with it. I just need to finish this bad boy. So I'm on pace to finish it right now in the next 2 months. Yep. So good for you. What advice would you give to your 25-year-old self?
Be patient. Be patient. Stay. I've always done a pretty good job of staying healthy. Be patient. You have, and that all the things that you're taught about the secular world, about success is money and cars and travel and private jets and all that stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've got some amazing stories and it's cool. But I look back now and all it is a story. Form relationships, I mean, I would have had a much better relationship with Christ at 25 because at 25, you know everything. And then when you get, on the backside of life, and even though I've always been a believer, to actually have that relationship, that's where peace comes from. For people that I'm a huge Lee Strobel guy. Matter of fact, last weekend he pastored at my church. Case for Christ, a case for faith, a case for Christmas. And now if you are not a believer and you listen to his stories that he went and found about ghosts and demons and real life stories of the supernatural, fascinating stuff. So for people that that want to believe, that there's so much evidence out there, but that's just some other books that I'm dwelling into. So that's have some discipline, enjoy your life, because even all the things you can do, you can be hit by a bus. I had a dear old surgeon buddy, pass away unexpectedly in his sleep. During COVID, might have had to do with the shot, but you never know. Like, it's just our tomorrow is not guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
So, the whole David Ramsey, sacrifice everything, save for tomorrow. I mean, that's okay to some degree, but you still have to enjoy your life. And, it's relationships. Like relationships are where you're going to find most of your joy. And of course, my kids and my wife. So,
love that.
But that's it. I was very much more selfish, much more narcissistic, much more. Everything was about growing the business. Everything was about money. Everything was about working hard, winning. And that's the problem with coming out of that gambling mindset. When you're, basically a professional golfer, professional, gambler, card player, all those things. You just learn to win, and that comes at a cost. And but again, I was very successful at it, and that's what parlayed to where I am today. But that's not what I would ever teach my kids. That's not the route I want them to go.
Good for you, man. So, I mean, when you're talking, you reminded me. There's a book I'm reading right now called The Second Mountain, and it's a Christian spiritual book. But it talks about the first mountain is all about ego, yourself. Building your your, success basically. But that second mountain is where you truly find fulfillment and joy. And that's where you're at right now, it sounds like.
So I'm definitely climbing a second, and it took, it took a journey, and it took, it definitely took some high power. But yeah, I'll give myself some credit. I'm definitely climbing up that second mountain.
Good for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Last real quick questions. What's your personal definition of wealth?
Wealth? I guess I could have prepared for that. Definition of wealth. I think when your passive income exceeds your bills, your daily needs, that's pretty damn wealthy. But I'll even take it further. That could be great if you weren't healthy. I would tell you wealth is health and time. That's really even more so now. I guess if you want to look at it from that, there's nothing more valuable than your health and your time. And the world's going to lie to you and just think that's a cliche until you get on the backside of life and realize, hey, that old saying, nobody's on their deathbed wishing they worked harder.
Right.
And so, but yeah, from a simplest standpoint, if you have enough passive income, or I guess so much saved money that you live off the interest, whatever, I guess to me, that's from a monetary standpoint, from a pecuniary standpoint, I'd say that. But man, wealth is time and relationships. I mean, that's wealth. That's from experience. Now again, a lot of these things come together, and it's people say, you can say that because you're in this situation. Well, I can tell you a lot of rich people that would give all their money away to be healthy. Yeah. So or have peace of mind. That's I've seen a guy at my club. Sold his company for, more money you can ever spend, and he's depressed all the time.
Yeah.
And and that's just so sad. Like it's so what's
he
that
may have sacrificed his family. He sacrificed his relationship with God. Who knows what that is? But like to your point, money doesn't mean everything.
Yeah.
All right, last one. Proverbs 11:25 states, "A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed." If you could make one lasting impact by giving back, what would it be?
Oh, I'm definitely setting up a trust in my life insurance, like perpetual trust, big on tithing. Matter of fact, I'm waiting, what used to not be. So I'm kind of waiting. I basically do it like this. When all this stuff is done and the taxes are done, I look at how much I made and I kind of do it for that year. So that's what and I try to teach my kids that, although it's hard in today's world. And they're young, but that's, whether you're giving back in time, money, mentorship, all those things matter. And, and it's, the old saying, it's better to give than receive. It's really true when you're on that second mountain. It's hard to understand that as a young kid. And, I can see young dentists, like, I got bills, I got debt, I'm drowning, I can barely even get by. And then the stories I hear of even like my brother and my brother-in-law, when they started totally dedicating 10% period, when I watched their two businesses grow, I off the charts, like off the charts. And so yeah, I think that's as much a legacy as anything, and that's definitely part of the trust and part of that death benefit going to those type of charities. So yeah, that's a big part of it.
Awesome. Thank you, man. I know, Jeff, you got to get back to a clinic here, but we appreciate your wisdom, your honesty, just all your insight. You're a fantastic guy. And when I heard you on the Chris Nagel podcast, I was like, man, this guy is sharp.
It's a lot of this. The beauty of life and experience is that you get to make a lot of mistakes. And if you can learn from them, and I always say you have great role models and great reverse role models. The smart people learn from both. So, I'm always available to talk about all the mistakes because there's so many, and that's okay. But that's part of the journey too. So thanks for the kind words. Thanks for inviting me. It's a privilege to be here, and hope somebody along the way.
Where can people find you if they want to reach out? Or if they want to see what you're doing.
I'm on Facebook. I'm not a big social media guy, but just my name on Facebook. I don't really do a lot of I don't do a lot of personal marketing. That's, it's more the company markets it. But if you reach out, I'll be happy to answer any question or message me or friend me or something like that. But yeah, just my name on Facebook. I don't really do a lot of, I don't do a lot of social media.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. No, that's a good thing. That's a good thing, man. Social media is there's a lot of negative on there.
Yeah, for sure. I watch, like, I tell that these devices, they're the devil's play. I mean,
Oh yeah.
my kids,
yeah.
my wife, just it's a constant battle of, and then
Mhm.
everything's on your phone. Even if you're trying to be on the computer or you're trying to pay bills or you're trying to buy something, it's still just constant distraction, right?
Yep. It's
So
tough. Yeah. We got young kids, 3 young kids. You could probably hear them. And yeah, you try to be off your phone the whole day to hang out with them. But then, of course, I'm on call. So you have to answer the phone call.
yeah,
Or to your point, you got to check an email, whatever. Like everything is on your phone. And,
yeah,
and it stinks if that's the case. So you got to hide it away and, focus on what you're doing. Be present.
yeah, exactly.
So,
Being present, there's a difference between being in a room and being present. And I've learned that
mhm.
too. Big difference. So
That's awesome, man. You're philosophical, and I love it. I love your viewpoint of things, and so we really appreciate you coming on. And good luck the rest of the day. Good luck with your surgery coming up.
well, thank you. I appreciate that. And thanks for having me on.
Yes,
Anytime,
sir.
call me again if we can talk about something else.
Deal. All right,
All
we'll be in
right.
touch soon.
You got it. Happy holidays, everybody.
This is my time. I'm on the rise. Can't hold me down. I'm too fly. This is my time.
Thanks for listening to the Doctors Investor Club podcast. I hope today's conversation inspired you to think bigger, dream bolder, and take the next step toward financial freedom. If you're a doctor or dentist and you're ready to join our community, head over to doctorsinvestorclub.com. Our mobile app and forum are free for physicians and dentists. You'll find AI tools, curated investor resources, and live events. And if you want VIP access to private dinners, exclusive deals, and opportunities to speak on stage, it's free when you refer 3 colleagues. Subscribe to the show, share it with a colleague, and remember, you're not just building wealth, you're building legacy.
Watch out. Here I come. This is my time. I'm on the rise.